So the pick is in. The Indiana Fever has chosen Raven Johnson. Now, with that being said, your boy John the Liquidator told y'all last week they was going to get Raven Johnson. Ain't nobody want to believe me. Now, do y'all believe me? We got ends. I'm plugged in like a socket. Told y'all they was finna get a Raven Johnson to be reunited with Aaliyah Boston.
That's the energy we need to talk about right there. Because while everyone's been focused on the big names and the drama, the Indiana Fever just made a move that tells you exactly what their strategy is for next season. Raven Johnson to Indiana. And if you know anything about that 2024 National Championship game, you know exactly why this matters. Let's back up for a second. April 2024. South Carolina versus Iowa for the title. Caitlin Clark, the most unstoppable offensive force in women's college basketball, gets held to 7 points in one game, 7. And the person who put the clamps on her? Raven Johnson. That wasn't luck. That was elite defensive instinct, understanding angles, and the kind of pressure that makes even generational scorers uncomfortable.
Raven Johnson put the clamps on her. I don't want to hear no hate. This is a great defensive pick. She only averaged 10 points during her college career, but I don't give a damn about none of that. Y'all gonna have to be mad. I'm happy as hell with this pick. Guys, this is a major move for the Fever defensively. I'm telling you right now, they keeping her. They ain't cutting her. She's staying. She is possibly finna replace Kelsey Mitchell, I feel like, when she gone. Guys, get down in the comment section. Let me know y'all thoughts about.
Now here's what makes this signing brilliant from a front office perspective. The Fever's biggest weakness last season wasn't offense. With Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Mitchell, they could score. The problem was on the other end. They got torched by quick guards, struggled with perimeter defense, and didn't have enough players who could handle defensive assignments without getting into foul trouble. Raven Johnson averaged 10 points in her college career. That's not why you draft her. You draft her because she's the kind of player who makes everyone else on the floor better defensively. She communicates, she rotates, she doesn't gamble for steals and leave her teammates exposed. That's the stuff that doesn't show up in highlight reels but wins you games in June. And there's another layer here: chemistry. Raven Johnson played with Aaliyah Boston at South Carolina. They won a championship together. They know each other's tendencies, they trust each other. And that kind of existing relationship is gold when you're trying to build team cohesion quickly.
And that is these two signings right here. So, boom. Welcome to Indiana, baby. We have Megan McConnell and Kenaya Traylor to the training camp squad. So the Indiana Fever has signed 2 new players to this training camp squad. Now, we remember they did this last year. They signed some players to the training camp squad, and I believe one of those players, I can't remember off the top of my head, man. I really just, God, please, guys, forgive me for that, who the players are. But we're going to jump right into the
training camp contracts. Let's talk about what that actually means, because this is where the Fever are being smart about roster construction. They just signed Megan McConnell and Kenaya Traylor to training camp deals. Both have Indiana ties. Both are guards. Both are coming in hungry to prove they belong. Megan McConnell is TJ McConnell's sister. TJ plays for the Pacers, so there's already a connection to the city and the organization. She was the Atlantic 10 Defensive Player of the Year in 2025, made 2 all-defensive teams, and led her program all-time in steals with 170. But here's the catch. She made her WNBA debut last June, and her season ended after just 13 minutes because of an injury. That's the risk-reward calculation. If she's healthy, you're getting an elite defensive guard who knows how to pressure the ball and create turnovers. If the injury lingers, you're not out much money because it's a training camp deal. Low risk, high potential upside.
So Indiana Fever adds 2 with local ties to training camp. So it seemed like we're seeing a repetitive thing here. They're signing people that has some familiarity or some common connection with Indiana, the city, and the state. But let's dive into this because it's my first time reading about this, y'all. So we finna learn about this together. So it's being reported that on April the 13th, the Indiana Fever have signed guards Kenaya Traylor and Megan McConnell to training camp contracts to the team.
Kenaya Traylor is the Indiana native from Martinsville. She played at Purdue, transferred to Virginia Tech, and helped lead the Hokies to their first ever Final Four appearance. She's been overseas in France, Turkey, and Israel. She played in Athletes Unlimited earlier this year and shot 44.2% from the field while averaging 8 points and 2.5 assists. Now, those aren't numbers that jump off the page. But here's what the stats don't tell you. She's a competitor who's been grinding internationally, she knows what it takes to earn minutes, and she's got something to prove. Players with that profile often outperform their contracts because they're playing with desperation and focus. The pattern here is obvious. The Fever are bringing in defensive-minded guards with local connections. They want players who understand what it means to represent Indiana, who have ties to the community, and who will play hard every possession because they know this might be their only shot.
This today, right? Now, a native of Martinsville, Indiana, Traylor joins the Fever, having previously spent time with Minnesota, as well as international teams in France, Turkey, and Israel. Now, she was drafted number 23 overall in the 2023 WNBA Draft by the Chicago Sky. Now, Traylor began her collegiate career at Purdue, where she totaled 221 assists over the first 2 years.
Remember what happened with Erica Wheeler. She came in on a similar type of deal, proved she belonged, and became a valuable rotation player. The Fever are trying to find those diamonds in the rough. Players who got overlooked, who didn't get fair opportunities elsewhere, who will run through walls for a chance to stick on a roster. That's smart roster management. You can't build a championship team paying everyone max money. You need cost-controlled players who produce above their salary. And the way you find those players is by giving opportunities to people who have been counted out. But let's be real about something. Training camp deals don't guarantee anything. Most of these players won't make the final roster. The Fever still have roster spots to fill, and they're going to be selective about who actually gets to stay when the season starts.
Herself out of Indy. I don't know why she thought possibly that they was going to give her 700 big ones, but she did not get the 700 big ones from Indy. Minnesota took it on a chin, and they've been coming up with a lot of money out of nowhere. I'm just saying, man. So how do you guys feel about these pickups, man? I feel like these are, I don't know. Let's just see what happens. This is one of those let's see what happens type situation. Maybe this might work out for the Indiana Fever. This could be a good move, you know, because
the Natasha Howard situation is the elephant in the room. She opted out of her contract with Indiana, reportedly looking for a bigger payday. Minnesota gave her that money. The Fever didn't match. And that tells you something important about how they're evaluating talent versus cost. Natasha Howard is a good player, but is she worth significantly more money than what Indiana was offering? The front office said no. They let her walk. And now they're filling that roster spot and that salary cap space with multiple players who might collectively give them more value. This is the kind of decision that separates good front offices from mediocre ones. Emotional attachment to players versus cold, calculated evaluation of production and fit. The Fever are clearly in evaluation mode. They're not married to anyone except Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston. Everyone else has to prove their worth.
Broke the internet. They will be at the Masters, or they already there. They posted this picture online yesterday, chilling together. You know, living life, enjoying life, hopping on them PJs. Caitlin got the Nikes with the hat on. What the hat say? I don't know. I can't see it that good. But they living life, man. And that's what it's all about. Getting ready for the season. Some beautiful things going on. Because we already know, man, some things about to go down this year for the Indiana Fever, man.
Now let's talk about what this means for Kelsey Mitchell. Because if you're paying attention to the moves the Fever are making, there's a real possibility she's not in their long-term plans. They're stockpiling guards, they just drafted another one. They're signing guards to training camp deals. That's not an accident. Kelsey Mitchell is a scorer. She can get you 20 points on any given night, but she's also a free agent after this season, and she's going to want to get paid. The question is whether the Fever thinks she's worth what she's going to command on the open market. If they don't, then what you're seeing right now is them building depth at the guard position so they have options when she walks. Raven Johnson could slide into a starting role. One of these training camp players could prove they can contribute. And suddenly, losing Kelsey Mitchell doesn't cripple your roster because you've got younger, cheaper options ready to step up.
Be good. They might be good, bro. But as of right now, I don't know, man. We got more WNBA news. Look like Nalissa Smith will stay in Las Vegas. I don't know how much money they gave her, but she's staying. Shout out to her. She getting her bag. And yeah, hold on, guys. Let's see. Somebody said, I think they're bringing in players exactly like Ari, as you say, need to have players that would be familiar with the team. Yeah. And so them bringing in players like Ari.
Here's what makes the Raven Johnson pick so interesting from a strategic standpoint. She's not just a defensive specialist. She's insurance. If Kelsey Mitchell leaves, you need someone who can handle the ball, run the offense, and not be a complete liability on the offensive end. Raven can do that. She's not going to give you 20 points, but she'll give you smart basketball. She'll make the extra pass. She'll set up Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston in their spots. She'll play within the system and not try to do too much. And defensively, she'll be one of the best perimeter defenders in the league from day one. The other thing to consider is development. Raven Johnson is young. She's got room to grow as a shooter and a scorer. If the Fever's player development system can help her become even a 35% three-point shooter, suddenly you've got a starting caliber two-way guard on a rookie contract. That's incredibly valuable. So let's put all of this together and talk about what the Indiana Fever are actually building here. Because when you step back and look at the full picture, there's a clear philosophy emerging. They're prioritizing defense. Every single move they've made this offseason has been about getting tougher, more physical, and harder to score against. Raven Johnson, Megan McConnell, Kanea Traylor, all defensive-minded players. That's not a coincidence. They're betting on local connections. Players with ties to Indiana, players who understand the market, players who have something to prove in front of a home crowd. That creates buy-in and accountability that you can't manufacture with mercenaries just chasing a paycheck. They're building depth through competition. By bringing in multiple players at the same position, they're creating internal competition for roster spots and playing time. That raises the floor of your entire roster because nobody can coast. Everyone has to earn it every single day, and they're being financially disciplined. They're not overpaying for name recognition or past production. They're evaluating players based on fit, upside, and cost. That's how you build sustainable success in a salary cap league. Now, does this guarantee the Fever are going to win a championship next season? Of course not. There are still questions. Can Stephanie White maximize this roster? Will the chemistry come together quickly enough? Can they find a reliable third scorer beyond Clark and Boston? Those are legitimate concerns. But what's undeniable is that they have a plan, and that plan makes sense. They're not just throwing money at problems or hoping star power alone will carry them. They're building a foundation: defense, chemistry, depth, and discipline. Think about where this team was 2 years ago. They were a laughingstock, the worst team in the league. No identity, no direction, no hope. Then they drafted Aaliyah Boston. Then they drafted Caitlin Clark. And now they're making calculated moves to put the right pieces around those two franchise cornerstones. The Raven Johnson pick is a perfect example. It's not flashy. It's not going to generate massive headlines or sell jerseys, but it's exactly the kind of smart, unsexy move that championship teams make. You need role players who know their role and execute it at a high level. You need defenders who can take pressure off your stars. You need glue guys who make winning plays, and here's the thing about Raven Johnson specifically. She's not going to be intimidated by the moment. She's played in national championship games. She's defended the best player in women's basketball and held her to 7 points. She's been on the biggest stages and delivered. That kind of experience and mental toughness is invaluable, especially for a young team still learning how to win. The training camp signings are equally strategic. You bring in players who are hungry, who have been overlooked, who will fight for every minute of playing time. Maybe one of them turns into a rotation player. Maybe both wash out. But you're creating competition, and competition breeds excellence. What's going to be fascinating to watch is how this all comes together in training camp. Because the Fever now have legitimate depth, they have options. Stephanie White is going to have real decisions to make about rotations, about who fits with whom, about how to stagger minutes to maximize defensive intensity without sacrificing offense. And that's a good problem to have. Last season, the Fever didn't have enough quality players. Now they might have too many. That means the players who make the roster are going to be battle-tested and proven. There won't be any weak links getting minutes just because there's nobody else. The comparison to make here is what the Las Vegas Aces did when they were building their championship core. They didn't just rely on Aja Wilson and Kelsey Plum. They surrounded them with defensive specialists, shooters who knew their role, and veterans who understood how to win. That's the blueprint. So where does this leave the Fever heading into next season? They've got their franchise player in Caitlin Clark. They've got their defensive anchor in Aaliyah Boston. They've now added a defensive stopper in Raven Johnson. They've got training camp competition at multiple positions, and they've still got cap space and roster flexibility to make another move if the right opportunity presents itself. The question isn't whether they're talented enough to compete. The question is whether they can put it all together. Can they develop the chemistry? Can they execute the game plan? Can they handle the pressure of expectations? Because make no mistake, the expectations are going to be sky high. This isn't a rebuilding team anymore. This is a team that should make the playoffs. This is a team that should win a playoff series. This is a team that, if everything breaks right, could make a deep run. And that brings a different kind of pressure. But if you're a Fever fan, you have to be excited about the direction. The front office is making smart moves. They're not panicking, they're not overpaying, they're building something sustainable, and that's exactly what you want to see. So what do you think? Is Raven Johnson going to be the defensive game changer the Fever need? Are they making a mistake by potentially letting Kelsey Mitchell walk? And which of these training camp players has the best shot at actually making the roster? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button if you're excited about what Indiana's building, and subscribe because we're going to be breaking down every single move this team makes as they try to build a championship contender around Caitlin Clark.